Welcome back. This is still the Keypoints live on TV3 and live on 3FM 92.7 as well on the internet. We're at 3news.com and on Facebook also at TV3 Ghana. So we're looking at the commemoration of the 42nd anniversary of the June 4th Uprising, which occurred yesterday. And the peculiar issue there had to do with the fact that it didn't have former President Jerry John Rawlings of blessed memory in attendance. We're looking at matters, historical accounts of it, and then we'll be soon zoning into the issues of contemporary times. Major, you were making a statement.
See, for instance, people would always confuse the position of Rawlings on the issue by forgetting that on 15th May, when he made the first move, it was against an existing unacceptable military regime. So that if he had to come a second time, when the situation was different, then we had to sit, because that's why. That's why I'm of the opinion that whereas I can accept 15th May, I could accept and move to implement it, I cannot ever accept 31st December.
Right.
Can be no justification for it, because it closes the workshop. And the fact that he even had to return to constitutional rule after that, I mean, certainly it's a proof. His own condemnation of his own action of 31st December. So we shouldn't confuse, as I said earlier, power with the opportunity to defend principles that would live long after we are gone.
Right. And like Zenato said there, Dr. Zenato, he said clearly the commemoration of the event yesterday without Jerry John Rawlings of blessed memory is testament to the fact that people don't live forever, but principles do.
But what she and others didn't talk about was that Rawlings was a very complex situation.
A very complex.
Complex in the sense that 31st December has also had to be accounted for in his lifestyle. It's not just the June 4th. June 4th, as a matter of fact, if he hadn't come, he would have been prosecuted and appropriate action have been taken against him. He probably wouldn't be alive, to do all these things. So we've got to confuse power. We've stop confusing power with the opportunity to use power to change permanent situation, principles. You don't throw the water and the baby out basket with the baby, that kind of thing we say. So there can be no way anybody can justify 31st December as against it. June 4th is different from 31st December. In our case, we rose up to
do a house cleaning.
That's right, house cleaning and probity and accountability, which I fashion, that kind of thing. Because there was no opportunity to do it under a military regime where you are supposed to do things in order, you act on order, because you know why? In the army, or in the military practice as a profession, subordinates are not meant to take responsibility for orders, implementing orders given by superiors, standing order rule. If you did it, then you are making things difficult. That's why I'm always take refuge in the democratic opportunity to change things in society, because the principles of good living, principles of making things good for us will always remain. But the way of doing it will be different, because different people will look at it differently, unless you are bound by a set of rules. I mean, if, for instance, you are attached to a political belief system, like say NDC, my party is, as a social democrat, you don't get angry because you have got a bad social democrat leading you. You change him and make sure that you replace him and make sure that society moves along your belief system. You see, this is the confusion that we are all caught in, that we need to do something about. Power is not necessarily the space, a place in the space of political spectrum where you want to position yourself to implement your power. If you're a conservative, the way you want to look at society would be necessarily different from the way a liberal in the lower minority and middle minority will look at it. And unless we in Ghana, in Africa as a whole, make a distinction and a commitment that you cannot occupy the whole political space. That's why you have a party. You are a part of a whole. But you have to understand which part do you stand on the political space. This issue has never been clarified, and that's why you can allow, we can confuse 15th May with June 4th, and June 4th, 31st December. They are all different things. And the complex, the fact that Rollins did it does not stop us from being critical and say that it doesn't matter how bad the current regime is. If we don't have the means of disciplining him, then, like in 1983 in Britain, you heard about the men in grey suits. Margaret Thatcher was an elected prime minister, but she was not allowed to be voted out of office. That was a coup, if you like, but it was not also done by soldiers. Men in grey suits within the Conservative Party. Where are the men in grey suits in Ghana, where we can rely on, to take the action that needed to be taken, cleaning their own party before we are, as a whole, given opportunity to endorse somebody else or bring them back in.
Right. Now, you raised an issue about, I'll come to you, Honorable, very soon. I just want us to wrap up on the historical issues here. You raised an issue about principles.
Yes.
And I think when this discussion about June 4th and other coups come up, there's a talk about how people who purport to value certain principles, for which reason they take certain actions, they themselves are found to have gone contrary to the so-called principles that they hold dear. And here I'm looking at the fact of the sanctions or the consequences of taking certain actions. And we go talk about the indemnity clauses in constitutions, which is brought in to protect persons who perpetrate certain actions. But forgetting that when they came in, they perpetrated those actions against people, but didn't give those people the opportunity to be clothed, if you like, in indemnity clauses.
See, that's so much criticism of specific acts than the principle itself. You see, democracy as a means of changing government inevitably when things go wrong. It must not be confused with the ability to change things when you are in charge or after you are charged. If I have no provision to hold somebody to account when he is not in office, then the problem is so much with accepting a situation which should not be acceptable. Do we have the mechanism to make our life better? And if we can't, identify those who are made it impossible for us to make our life better and hold them to account when they are not in power.
But how do you hold them to account when you have indemnity clauses protecting them?
That's what I'm saying. If you have a democracy, it's nothing sacrosanct about indemnity clause. That's why I'm saying that if the Constitution has encouraged certain things to be said in, the sovereign parliament can override it and decide to, push it aside. Because I'm not worried to be examined by my conduct, So maybe in the heat of the aftermath of the revolution, people will be worried about so many things that they may misconstrue certain things. That's but time heals, and we need to have time to heal. But only if there are mechanisms to control the system.
Right.
As I get worried when people. Like my friend, would encourage an undemocratic takeover of a country. Who decides who's going wrong at that time?
First, talking about time heals and time healing, Honorable, do you think time has healed? I mean, this issue of June 4th obviously is a sensitive part of our political history. It raises a whole lot of sensitive issues. Do you think time has brought about some healing? And perhaps we can look at the national reconciliation process. Do you think it brought some closure to this?
Yes. I'm saying this because that's how God made the world. If things happen to you within a period, maybe you lose your wife, or maybe you go through a situation through the hands of somebody, after a period, you may forget and forgive. And look at the time from June 4 all the way to today. I think there's no way
it's that simple. When
yes.
people are commemorating the day, keep on commemorating the day.
Oh, as for the commemoration, just like the old man said, looking at the ideals and the beliefs, it should not be commemorated by just a particular political party. We should all embrace it. For some time, when I was with the old man himself, some of our friends on the other political divide were seeing him as somebody who should not be even attended to, or no one should even get closer to him. I went closer to the man when he was even in uniform. He was practicing democracy in a way, though it was a military regime, because he dealt with people after doing maybe the wrong thing. His own nephew, when he took somebody's life, he didn't say he's my nephew, so he should go free. He was dealt with. So I think looking at maybe situations and whatever happened with time, and because of the time involved, we can't say we should just revisit those days and whatever happened during the time of June 4. I'm not rubber stamping on maybe 31st December and whatever happened. I'm not approving of it. But I always say that we should all take a cue and learn something out of it. That is why when you take over, when you are given a position through the mandate of the people, you must hold it well and make sure that you embrace everybody and see everybody as a brother and a sister.
Yeah.
That's the only way that you can take action when action needs to be taken. That is how you can rebuke somebody when the person does the wrong thing. And that is the only way that everybody will have justice. If not that, you will end up looking at relations and faces of people and then do things according to maybe how you want things to be done. But out of wisdom, deal with whoever makes a mistake, be it a family or
regardless of who you're dealing with.
Whoever, yeah.
Very well. Major, do you think time has healed? Do you think there's still some unfinished business?
Time must heal. Not that I see it must heal, because I always look at a situation where I give an example of bad popes without all the sensitivity of our Catholic believers. A criticism of bad pope cannot confuse the Catholic Church as a belief. The problem in our part of the world is that we have not made a distinction between the principle and the personalities being called upon even to manage the democratic arrangement. Until we develop to that point, even democracy will be just a paperwork. Constitutions will be paperwork. And we have to be very careful not to confuse, as I said, a bad pope, the conduct of a bad pope, as a criticism necessary of a Catholic Church, as a belief system. We must move towards a situation where our political parties, and they are called parties, you are part of it, you are not the whole of it. That's why in this current constitution it is enacted that nobody has the right to turn this country into a one-party state. I find a lot of problem with that because if some of us manage to organize ourselves and say, we believe in living under a one-party state, who is there to say you can't do that? So that the constitution as it is now has actually denied certain options in future. But that's not correct. That can't be correct.
And we've decided that as a people.
No, well, that's what I'm saying. But if tomorrow, as a people, we also decide that we want one-party state.
Sure. So far as so far as the people decide and it's the law, then
that's what I'm saying. Then
until
we change it. We can change it. But you can't say you can't change it. You see, because the people will always be there.
Which is why the Constitution will provide the means of changing
what
that?
I'm saying
if
is
it's an
that
entrenched provision, then we
that's
do a
why
referendum, yes.
the people will always be there.
Sure.
Their interests will be constant. So if tomorrow the people were to come to say that we don't want it, but we want another arrangement to regulate our life, who is there to decide that for me today? That you can't have a one-party state. It's wrong. That's part of the problem I have with the current constitution. Nobody has the right to deny anybody the government he wants to live under.
But that's what the constitution is saying, and that is the constitution of the people.
But I think, so if the majority of the people,
that's his interest.
that's why if one majority of the people were to decide tomorrow that we want a one-party state,
And so far as we change the constitution in accordance with law, then that would be cool. Otherwise, then it would be unconstitutional. Yeah.
So that putting it on the paper was wrong in the first place.
Really?
Because you cannot dictate for all time, for all people.
But who's dictating? It's the people.
That's what I'm asking the question. If tomorrow people want to go to the streets and say, look, we don't want this one multi-party state here. We want one-party state. Now, what will be the legal status of that? When the Constitution now says you can't do that.
So what they would be looking for would be unconstitutional in the circumstances.
Who decides that?
The Constitution.
Which Constitution? Whose Constitution?
Anyway, the people's Constitution.
That's right, and the people are saying we want to go one-party state. In other words, the danger is that we should not put ourselves in a position where we take decision for all time, for all people. We have an arrangement, yes, within which you can go and change things when they do go wrong. But you shouldn't make a mistake of institutionalizing certain principles as valid for all time, for all.
Very well. We need to take a break at this point. When we come back, we look at the implications of June 4th, the probity, accountability, integrity principles, and whether or not it still resonates with the country as we find ourselves in, and particularly the values as they relate to the NDC. We do know in the years before the death of the founder of the NDC, he had some strong positions about the party in respect of these core values. So we'll be interrogating that in the last part of our discussion here. So let's take a break. We'll be right back.